Morning, church fam. Forgive the rough voice this morning. I apologize. We've got a little sickness running around our household, so I'll do my best. But, and I'm sorry for the mean trick. I owe you guys 30 seconds of silence at some point. I'm actually impressed. I was going to ask how many of you went for your phone, but I actually looked around. I didn't see any lights pop up. So either you guys have dark mode and you have, hide screens or something like that, or you guys were actually really good and you took silence, which I'm impressed with. Did anybody feel the urge to go for their phone? No? Teenagers? No? Liars. No, I'm just kidding. So, the fact is, we live in a very noisy, busy, distracting world. It's safe to say that, we live in an extraordinarily distracting world and a distracted world. Malcolm talked about, the guy trying to store up wealth. And in this area, that's one of our chief distractions. How do we actually store up our money? How do we continue to save toward retirement? How do we make sure that we have enough? Because, let's face it, it's not cheap to live in Silicon Valley, right? We get distracted by that. I've personally struggled with distraction my whole life. I'm what some might call an undiagnosed ADD all-star. Meaning, for those of you that don't know ADD, I have a really hard time quieting the mechanism that is my brain for any extended period of time. So I'll do my best to stay on point today and not be distracted from talking to you guys about distraction, which I know is kind of ironic. I'll also do my best to not be distracted by my own voice and the copious amounts of cold medicine I've got running through my veins and tea. So why am I talking about distraction today? It's not just because you guys need medication like I do, which, by the way, I don't. I'm just kidding. I shouldn't joke about that. But the reality is, I'm talking to you guys about distraction because it's actually dangerous. It's dangerous. Fellas, I'll prove it. I'll prove it to you using you guys, okay? So married men in the room. How many of you are married? A few of you, right? Raise your hands. Great. Okay, focus on these people. Married men. Monday, tomorrow, go home. Sit down with your wife after work and be like, babe is what I call my wife. Babe, I'd really love to hear all about your day. Tell me everything. Tell me all the details. I want to know your heart. I want to know everything about it. And as she melts and she's excited, because you never ask those kind of questions, let's be real. No, I'm just kidding. As she starts to tell you about her day, mid-sentence, reach for the TV remote and turn it on. Watch what happens. Yeah, men don't do that, by the way. It's bad. That is not wise counsel coming from me. Trust me, married as well. That's death. That's actually, that's dangerous. But don't do that. I see the men in the room are looking at me like, that's not even funny. Why would you even suggest that? And the women in the room are like, I dare you to turn on the But, I was doing some research on distraction, which is actually a weird thing to research. But apparently people knew it was dangerous a long time ago. Yeah. Did you guys know there's actually a medieval torture named distraction? I know that's morbid, but we're going there today. So check it out. There's actually a medieval torture. The French did it. Any French people in the audience? Yeah, y'all are crazy. It's okay, though. Actually, they called it distraction, which I guess to them would be distraction. I don't know. All the French I know I learned from Pepe Le Pew. But, but here's the reality. Distraction was when they would tie your hands and your feet to 4 different horses by rope. And on the signal, they would send the horses in 4 different directions. The end result, you guys could probably guess. I'll leave that up to your imagination. I'm not going to go there. But basically, it was death by distraction, literally being pulled into so many different directions, you couldn't keep it all together. Seemed kind of fitting, actually, for that name. Or something more recent. How about this? Here's a fun stat. Did you guys know that there are over 350,000 driving accidents each year in America that are blamed on distracted driving? It's crazy, right? But those are just accidents. Did you know that of those, about 8.5% of them are actually fatal accidents? That's about 64 to 65,000 deadly accidents due to distraction. Now, to give you some context, The average number of gun-related deaths in the U.S. is between 35 and 38,000 a year. Now, I'm not trying to make a political statement here. Please don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm just making an obvious comparison to something that is clearly dangerous, like guns, right? Deadly, right? But then distracted driving is almost double that stat. That's crazy. Distraction isn't just dangerous, it's deadly, which leads me to the topic on the screen here, death by distraction. It's actually kind of an interesting idea the more I got thinking about it. And some of you are like, I don't text and drive, it's not an issue. But I'm not even talking about texting and driving. In fact, what I'm talking about is more like the torture than it is like distracted driving. Because I think, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I think we've all struggled with being pulled in so many different directions that we struggle to keep it together. I think that's a safe assessment. Wouldn't you agree? So maybe in a very less gruesome way, but in as much of a personally detrimental way, every single one of us, including myself, can be pulled in so many different directions. We struggle to keep it together. Therefore, we struggle and we are at risk of death by distraction. And it's tricky because, there's constantly things pulling at us. It's not like we could just stop and put it all down. I wish I could some days. Let's be real. Woke up with a cold. I'd love to just be like, yeah, I could just sit on the couch. No, that doesn't work. I can't even function that way. I have an issue. I don't sit still very well. Again, that whole ADD thing. But yeah, there are constantly things pulling us and pulling us and pulling us, screaming at us, almost like that video, those loud noises calling for our attention. Maybe they're not audible loud noises. Maybe you don't have a baby crying or a cell phone buzzing, but there's something internally that's screaming at us. Homework needs to get done, right? Your job needs to get done. Focusing on your family needs to get done, right? Now, distractions are constantly dragging us away from something that our attention was previously on. And I would actually argue it's probably dragging us away from something that our attention should be on. Again, homework, your job, family, driving a car, this sermon, I don't know. But that's what distraction is. And so for the purpose of today and our conversation, I want to define it like this. And it'll be on the board. Distraction is anything that takes your attention away from something important. It's a really simple definition. Anything loud, anything urgent, anything demanding. It doesn't even have to be a negative thing, understand. It's just something that shifts your attention away from something that's also important, something that's important. So for instance, to use that driving example I gave earlier, that text from your friend needing urgent prayer is urgent, but it's distracting you from something that's more important. You're driving a car, right? So understand there's a battle for our attention every minute of those 1,440 minutes a day. In fact, some of you are going, wait, 1,440 minutes, and you're distracted by actually trying to do the minute math. Don't. I've already done it. Put the calculators away. You'll be fine. This morning I'm talking to you about distraction, not because I think you all need meds, but I'm talking to you because I think distraction puts us at risk. See, it is one of the things that is constantly stealing from us. Excuse me. And moreover, I think distraction is probably one of the most subtle killers of Christians that exists today. And that's why I'm talking to you guys. And it's tricky because the biggest distraction we have is actually the distraction of doing. The distraction of doing. Think about it. There's always something to be done. Always. And this is where it gets really challenging because, see, folks, men and women, our doing is biblical. It's biblical. We're supposed to do good works. We're supposed to use our gifts to serve and work hard. We're supposed to have a good work ethic. We are supposed to do those things. It's biblical. Check it out. Philippians 2:5-7. It actually illustrates how our mindset should be. It says, in your relationship with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Or 1 Peter 4:10 says, each one should use whatever gift they have received to serve others faithfully, administering God's grace in its various forms. Do you guys know that when you serve others, you are actually administering God's grace? That's awesome. In the beginning, we were actually set to rule and subdue the earth and all the animals in it. There are tons of scriptures actually explaining that we're supposed to work and how we're supposed to work. Deuteronomy 5:13 says, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. 1 Timothy 5:8, here comes some conviction, folks. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives and especially for their own household has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Ouch. That's New Testament teaching, by the way. That's not Old Testament. A lot of people think the harsh words are in the Old Testament. No, this is 1 Timothy. That's pretty harsh. But Colossians 3:23-24, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as if working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. It's biblical. We're supposed to work. We're supposed to serve. So then wait. But it's pulling us away. It's interesting. There's tons to do. Let's face it. We live in the most expensive place in the world to live. Do you guys know that? Statistically, that's sick. I mean, I get it. I love the Bay Area. I love California. But it's sick. The rent here, the houses here, crazy. So we have to work extra hard. And you see people grinding away and grinding away. So often so that our personal lives take a hit. Our families pay that burden, right? And not just our daily work. It doesn't stop there. There's always something to be done. Some of it's good. Some of it's good. We get to serve. That's good. It says earlier, like I said, we're administering God's grace to people. That's awesome. So some of it's a good thing. Some of it, feels kind of like a chore. Like I hate folding laundry. Absolutely hate it. My wife loves to have the laundry put away. So if ever I want to give a good act of service and a kindness to my wife, I'll actually fold the laundry. You'd be amazed. It's like I gave her diamonds. It's weird. I don't get it. But, there's always something to be done. Some of it, like I said, it could feel like a chore. Churches actually have a ton of stuff that need to get done. This place, my gosh. If you guys knew all the inner workings, and most of you do, it's kind of funny. This church is blessed. For those of you that don't know, this church is above and beyond the norm when it comes to how much you guys do. And it's awesome because, see, there's a ton to do, but thankfully there are these wonderful things, these wonderful people, these anointed angel people, in my opinion, called volunteers. And you guys got this dialed. There's some crazy stat. It's like 75% of you volunteer in some capacity here at Trinity Church. We literally could not do anything as a church body without you guys. You're amazing. For those of you, let me just ask, who here in this room serves in some capacity, whether it's turning the lights on and off, you sweep, you mop, you do the cafe, you greet people, anything like that? Can any of you raise your hands, please? I know there's a handful of you in here. My goodness. Just in this room, most of you. Can you just clap for each other? I mean, honestly. You guys are spiritual giants, in my opinion. I'm a youth pastor. What I do, we need volunteers. It's amazing. So when we see people step up, man, it's exciting. Because of this, and because how much I know you guys serve and how much I know you guys pour out, I actually feel compelled. I feel like it's an obligation that I need to talk to you about this and caution you guys a little bit. Now, I'm not shaming you for doing. I'm not even telling you not to. It's just, dang, there's a subtle killer on the loose. And if I didn't actually advise you about that, I would be a really poor pastor. I wouldn't be a shepherd at all. The distraction of doing is realistically the number one distraction. It constantly pulls our attention away from the most important thing. You remember that definition? It's shifting our attention away from something more important, our personal relationship with Jesus. Now, don't be confused here, okay? Doing nothing is not how to avoid death by distraction. It's not. It's not to stop doing things. It's not even to do less. It's not that at all. In fact, I'd say the biggest names in Christianity and discipleship had probably pretty full calendars. I mean, I'm guessing Jesus, Paul, Peter, those guys weren't really sitting around on their laurels a whole heck of a lot, right? I mean, Paul wrote, 3/4 of the New Testament? Busy dude. He discipled a lot of people along the way too. So understand, I'm not saying stop serving. I'm not saying stop volunteering. In fact, Paul, who I just talked about, he actually, in 1 Corinthians 9:24, he says, do you know that in a race, all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way to get the prize. Now, understand, guys, Paul is not saying only one of you gets to heaven. Thank God. Because I'm not very fast. And he's also not saying that, it's our works that does it. But he is saying, sort of whatever cliche you want to do, leave it all on the field. Leave no gas in the tank. Pour it all out. However you want to say it. He's saying, let it go, do it all. And for me personally, I love this. I grew up a blue-collar kid in a blue-collar family. But, hey. I pride myself and have always prided myself on being a worker. Like, as growing up, my dad worked for the city of San Francisco and then the city of Daly City. The man literally broke his back working on a jackhammer and continued to work because he wanted to provide for the family. 5 back surgeries later, the man could barely walk, but he was working. My mom, arthritic in her hands, was a banker, in her shoulders and her hands, was a banker for 30 years, grinding away, just doing whatever she could to make sure that our family always had enough. 5 kids. I have 2. I have no understanding of how they did that. It's amazing. But my work ethic came from that. So for me, it was always a source of pride. Almost as if, my identity was based on how much I did. And I think after I became a Christian in my adulthood, that sort of took on as well. I started reading these verses like run the race and do all these things and work for Jesus, that I almost had this sense of pride in me that somehow God would be more proud of me if I worked more for him, if I did more for him. Any of you fall trapped to that? I know it's pretty common. It's actually really common. We don't actually admit it to ourselves a lot of the time. A lot of the time it's just this is our duty. This is what we're supposed to do. But if I'm being honest with you, I'm going to switch. Go for the big guns here. If I'm being honest with you, it's because of that. It's that good old-fashioned Christian guilt, if you will, that I have a hard time ever being still mentally. Even if I'm still physically, I'm 42 steps ahead down the road somewhere, planning and thinking and doing other things. It drives my wife nuts. And one area where I really struggle in my walk with God, which, by the way, will reflect in my life. It reflects in my faith, my marriage, my parenting, my leadership, is putting so much energy and work into doing all of the doings, all that work for Jesus, that I am regularly failing to put that same kind of effort and energy into simply being with Jesus. Because frankly, I'm tired. I'm depleted. I'm doing things on my own strength. I'm distracted by how much there still is to do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't sit still. I've got a sermon to write. I can't sit still. I got a camp to plan. I can't sit still. Their dishes are dirty. I can't sit still. My son wants to play. I forget on a regular basis. And I shouldn't say I forget, because the truth is, I kind of backburner it on a regular basis. That God tells you to be still and know that I am God. In today's fast-paced world, we all struggle in that way, I'm certain, even if you don't admit it. And retirees out there, let me just say, you're not off the hook. I know some of you, and you lap the 30-somethings in the crowd with how busy you guys are. So don't sit here and try and be like, I'm retired. I don't have to. I just sit on my couch and I go golfing. Bull. In fact, the people that have retired at this church, it's crazy. You guys actually step it up a notch, and you sign up for 5 more things to volunteer for, because you now have free time, which is great. I love that. I love that you guys volunteer. Just want you to be careful. So, I think for me, it's really easy to deprioritize and lose sight of what's really important, that time with Jesus. And the truth is, guys, God values that a heck of a lot more than all of our doings. Facts, straight truth. He values you and the time you spend with him more than all the doings. I'll prove it to you. Luke 10. We're going to pick it up here. This is where I'm going to camp for most of the day. I'll read it to you in a second. Thank you for being patient with my constant drinking. So verse 38. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparation that had to be done. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Now, I underlined that. I said, Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. That word literally actually means to be pulled away from, pulled apart from. See, Jesus had come over to her house to spend time with her and her sister, and she's being pulled apart and pulled away from him by all of the doings. She was getting upset. She was getting upset. See, we actually have 2 pictures of 2 different women here. This is actually fascinating to me. We have Mary, who is sitting at the Lord's feet. I picture her just hanging on every word, almost like a modern teenager stuck to their device screen, like impossible to get their attention, right? That's Mary in this moment. She's just like, and Martha's like, Mary, and she's just, it's Jesus. Can't blame her. Right? But then you got then you got Martha. Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She's slaving away in the kitchen, kind of ticked off. She's like, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work? Tell her to help me. Don't you care? Surely Jesus would understand. And it wasn't, listen to her heart here, guys. This is not, don't you care that she's not helping? It was deeper than that. Don't you care about me? I want to spend time with you too, but I'm being pulled away. I'm being separated from you. I don't get to spend time with you. It's not fair. Don't you care about me too? She's pleading with Jesus in this moment. And I think it's interesting. He did understand. And he did care. But he didn't respond the way Martha thought he would. So verse 41, it says, Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. Now, I get a good chuckle at this because I get the cultural aspect of it. Now, I'm not a Jew. Don't get me wrong. No, I'm Italian. Same thing. No, but see, my mom's Italian. My mom is an Italian woman. And my dad, his family's from the South. So no matter how you slice it, hospitality is a big deal at our house. And if you came to my house, man, my parents would feed you. And I'm not just talking about feed you. Like, they would feed you, and then they would feed you seconds. Even if you didn't want seconds, you're getting fed. My mom, bless her heart. That's a Southern way for, anyway. That woman, she will literally be in another person's home. She would sneak into the room, like me and my friends would be there playing, video games or just hanging out in the room listening to music. My mom would like poke her head and be like, need anything? I'm like, need you to leave. It's weird. No, I don't need anything. I was a snotty teen. I was a mean teenager. But you know what's crazy? My mom still to this day, like legit, she'll be in somebody else's house. Somebody else's house. Hear me. This is the level that we're talking about here. My mom, Cindy, will be at my house, at my brother's house, at a family friend's house. And she'll walk around the house and be like, can I get you anything? Do you need anything? I'm like, Mom, you're the guest. Sit down. Be served once in a while. My mom might be Cindy, but let me tell you, folks, she is Martha on a deep level. And I get that. But see, here's the thing. That's not a bad thing. I think Martha gets a bad rap. See, Martha's got a good heart. She loves people, just like my mom. She loves people. She serves people. That's what she does. And in that culture, it was a big deal. Like, if a guest came to your house, they were royalty. You treated them like they were somebody special. So the fact of the matter is, Martha's got a reason to have a little bit of a beef right now. It's fair. It's valid. Culturally, that's a big deal. So again, it's not a bad thing to have that kind of heart, as long as it's not distracting you from something more important. So back to the Gospel of Luke. I get Martha being upset. I get it. I mean, think about this. I don't know about y'all, but I know for me, my family, at least my family of origin where I grew up, we would literally, we called it putting on the dog. We would literally get dressed up. We would clean the whole house. Anybody in here ever vacuum curtains? My mother would literally make us vacuum curtains. I don't even know what that does. She would make us vacuum curtains. That's the level of cleanliness that we would do. We would clean the house. We would make sure everything was spick and span, as my dad said, military man. And the food would be good. My mom would break out the china. We would put on the dog for people we didn't even like that much. Like Christmas would come and the relatives would come, and let's be real, there's always like that one aunt and uncle to that one cousin that you're like, I kind of wish they would say no when they wouldn't come. Like maybe they wouldn't RSVP yes +4. It would be like, no, we can't make it this year. And inside you're like, yes, those people. But we still put on the dog for those people. This is Jesus though, folks. Let's be real for a minute. Jesus is a guest in her house. Everything's got to be perfect. The food has to be perfect. The house has to be clean. Man, those cushions that he's going to sit on have to be good. Everything has to be right. This is Jesus. The burden that she was feeling is real. The pressure is real. She's got a valid beef right now with her sister who's doing nothing. How can you just sit there? There's so much to be done. At least fluff the pillows under his feet. Come on, do something. How can you just sit there? How many of us, me included, have Martha's voice in their head on a regular basis? I'd love to sit and spend all day with Jesus too. I got bills to pay. I got kids that need to be hung out with. I'm like, come on. There's stuff to get done. I got a pile of dishes in my kitchen right now because my wife and I are sick and we're not trying to handle the dirty dishes and get everybody else sick. And my daughter's working a lot and my son's too little to really mess with the dishes that much. He can, but he breaks a few. So The dishes need to get done. The laundry needs to get done. These things need to get done. I got Martha's voice in my head all the time. So much so that y'all probably don't know this, but Pastor Joel and my wife, I'm pretty sure they're in cahoots with this one, but they both have mandated that I take a mandatory Sabbath. I think that's hilarious. But it's actually needed because they know that I have a struggle with this. So they forced me. They told me, Pastor Joel will point out, like he will tell you, Sabbath is super important. Especially as a pastor, you need to take that time. And I'm like, but I'm busy. And here's some irony for you. I was planning this sermon weeks back, and my wife called, and she was checking on me like she normally does, right? And she's like, how you doing? Oh, I'm actually really stressed. Man, I got a lot to do. I really got to get this sermon done on busyness and distraction. I don't think I'm going to get a Sabbath this week. And as the words left my mouth, I was like, oh, huh. And I could hear her voice in my head, which ironically in this moment sounded a lot like the Holy Spirit, kind of like, that's ironic. And I muttered, that's ironic. And Jen, my wife, just kind of smiled. You could hear it through the phone. She just kind of smiled. She's like, I'm glad you said it. I'm like, yeah. But see, that's the thing. I was convicted because, guys, I'm a Martha too. I'm a Martha too. And that's weird to say. I'm a 290-pound Martha with a beard. Not a pretty Martha, but I'm a Martha. But it's because of that fact, it's because that I am a Martha, that to me, Jesus' response to Martha is possibly, in my opinion, one of the most profound statements in the whole New Testament. He says, Martha, Martha. He says her name twice. See, he does care. He's appealing to her. He's like, Martha, Martha. He can see her distress. He can see she's freaking out. He knows her heart. It's a good heart. He sees her and he knows. But listen to what he says. Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. Now notice here, he uses a comparative. He says better. He doesn't say what she chose was right and what Martha chose was wrong. He says better. Like, did y'all know that you can actually have a good thing and then a better thing? That's okay? Like chips and salsa, good, right? Add guacamole, add some sour cream, add some queso. It's better, right? Great, now I've distracted y'all with nachos. But that's the facts. What Mary has chosen is better. And see, this is the tension with distraction. Jesus understood it. But it was like he was saying, Martha, no, honey, I know you're frustrated because it's all important. I get the cultural dynamic here. I understand. I see the stress on your face. But one is better than the other, and I really don't want you to miss out on what's better here. Sitting with me. Now, I'm not splitting hairs here, guys. I don't want to go into this whole, serving versus not, or good distractions versus bad distractions, because that's not Jesus' point. That's not my point either. Jesus here is actually talking about something totally different. He's talking about priority and order. Hear me. He's talking about priority and order, like in math, okay? Math, you do things in the right order, you get the right outcome. You do things the wrong order, doesn't go so well, right? Now, you guys remember when you were kids, maybe not, some of you are closer to school age than others, but some of you are just math whizzes in the crowd. I know some accountants and some engineers are out here. Do you guys remember the order of operations? They called it like PEMDAS, or I learned it in the 80s. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, like this. First you do the parentheses, then you do the exponents, then you multiply, divide, add, and subtract. And if you do the problem in that order, you'll be all right. But if you do it in the wrong order, you're going to get the wrong outcome. See, Jesus is talking about this. Now, not math, life. And I know for some of you accountants and some of you, engineers out there, you're like, what's the difference? But the reality is, Jesus is talking about the order of operations for your life here. Order of operations for your life. Even a great thing like your ministry, like my ministry, like your serving, which is literally changing eternity and generations, can distract us from being in that better thing, our personal relationship with Jesus. Now, if we do this in the right order, one can fuel the other. Sitting with God leads to a heart full of God's love, which then leads to humility, which then leads to being in alignment with the one who served perfectly. And then we have that model. So this helps us to love others and serve humbly out of the knowledge that when we get to serve, it's a gift and a privilege to partner with God in something. That's what happens when our order of operations is lined up. But if it's wrong, we get the wrong outcome. Our souls become depleted. We become depleted because we're constantly pouring out, not pouring back in. And if we're not careful, we can end up prone to burnout and feeling exhausted, feeling like even our ministries and our serving our chores. It's like putting away the laundry. They become have-to-dos rather than get-to-dos. And then when it's really, really bad, it might lead to stop spending time with Jesus altogether because we're just too stinking busy. We're too tired. We're too distracted by the fact that we're too tired because we're too busy and we're distracted. Our eyes become on all of the pile of tasks rather than sitting with Jesus. And since I'm using this as my personal confessional up here, I struggle with this as well. My quiet times constantly hijacked. Not intentional. Not intentionally going into the quiet time to be hijacked, but if I'm not careful about my order of operations. See, spending time with Jesus has got to be the parentheses. Otherwise, the equation doesn't work. And if I'm not intentional and careful about that, I'm up and out and onto my day before I even take a moment to sit down and pray. That's facts. I'm gone. And if I do sit with Jesus, that can be distracted too. You'd think I'd be like, no, zoned in. Nope. Because then I'm like, that's a good note for so-and-so. I should write that down. Or then I start writing a sermon. Or if I get really off the rails, I start thinking about my to-dos on my list. And then I'm basically doing the same thing I told you men to do to your wives. I'm having a conversation with Jesus, and I reach for my life's TV remote, and I turn it on. It's fact. Mid-sentence. I think I could sometimes even treat my quiet time like I'm calling a timeout in the big football game of life. What I mean by that is I'll like run over to the sideline, right? I'll get my encouragement. I'll get that pat on the butt. I'll get some Gatorade for some refreshment and get back out there and serve some more. When in reality, this puts Jesus in the context of a self-help guru. The end result being more energy for our doings and activities. When in reality, the result should be Jesus wants a relationship with me and he wants a relationship with you because he loves you. I know that's a little touchy-feely for some folks out here today. And guys, when I say quiet time, I'm not talking about like 10 minutes alone with your Bible app while using the restroom, okay? Y'all are getting to know me too much right now. But I'm talking about a heart posture here. Not more to-dos, but a heart posture. A posture like Mary, where you're setting aside the have-to-dos so we can focus on the better thing. And I know, preaching to the choir, we can all read our Bibles more. We can all pray more. But can you hear how that sounds like just doing more? It's more than just doing more stuff. It's restructuring our lives equation It's putting things in a proper intentional order. None of us are going to create more minutes in our day. I'm not talking about trying to cram more minutes and more time in so we can cram more Jesus in. I'm talking about having Jesus be the priority, the number one thing, and everything else that happens can happen. This is about prioritizing what is better over what is good so we can do those good things better. Let me say that again. This is about prioritizing what is better over what is good so we can do the good things better. Out of that heart place, out of that full heart, prioritizing having time with Jesus has got to come first so that we can do our doings properly focused on him. More fueled up, more effective, not distracted or exhausted. And gang, this, I know it's New Year's, but this is not a New Year's resolution type of thing. Unrealistic goals help nobody. So I'm not saying like some of you, like me, are going to be like, man, I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get fit. I'm going to have a six-pack by this time next year. Okay. I'm going to pray constantly. I'm going to pray nonstop. I'm going to be so in my Bible that I have the whole thing memorized. I am going to be the most spiritual person in the world. No. Maybe. But do you think that that's what God's after? And maybe for some of you out there, he is. Maybe he's like, yeah, you need to spend a lot more time praying. And you definitely need to get in your word more. You got a Bible that's been on your nightstand that's got more dust on it than the underside of the TV. I get it. But this is about starting small with some order of operations things. Some tactile things that you guys can do. Remember your order of ops. Your first go-tos have got to be God. It's your parentheses. And if that's the case, let me introduce an idea to you. God first. So I said before there's 1,440 minutes in a day, in a week, right? Sorry, in a week, not in a day. That'd be a long day. 1,440 minutes. Now, if you took 1% of that, just one, that's 14.4 minutes. We'll just round up. We'll call it 15 for easy math, right? It's 15 minutes. Take that 15 minutes every single day first. Spend it with God, intentional, talking to him, laying your doings at his feet, talking to him and being like, Jesus, I'm tired today. Jesus, I don't want to even get out of bed today. Jesus, I got 36,000 things I got on my to-do list, and I've only got one check mark. Have those conversations. And more importantly, have those conversations with him about, hey, should I be doing this or not? How do you want me to proceed? I got a really stressful business meeting today with a bunch of people. How would you like me to handle that today? Yeah, get in his word. But I want 15 minutes of your time. Now think about this. 1%. That's an hour and 45 minutes a week. That's less than any Marvel movie. That's less than this new Star Wars. That's almost half the new Star Wars movie. That's it feels like it's like a week less than the Downton Abbey movie. But I watched it recently. It's actually pretty good. I've never seen the show in my life. I watched it and I was like, hey, it's all right. But it's less than that. Y'all can do 1%. 1%'s easy. It's light work, as the kids like to say. Light work. Another first should be our first responses. Now, too often we say yes as if saying no is an ungodly response. Am I wrong? Because I know in Christian circles, we love to say yes. Or we'll give the Christian no. We'll say, oh, I'll pray about it. That shouldn't be the Christian no, by the way. That should be the real thing. You should pray about it. In fact, my suggestion is if Pastor Corey comes up to you and says, hey, man, I need you to be a greeter. Or hey, woman, I would really love your help with doing the offering. And if you're like, you know what? Grab Pastor Corey in that moment. He's going to kick me for saying this later. But grab him in that moment and be like, can we pray right now? If I'm even supposed to do this. Because here's the thing. The Holy Spirit's with you all the time. Shouldn't we ask him if we're supposed to? before we say yes or no, right? And then listen. Maybe it's a response. Maybe it's a song. Maybe it's a gut feeling. Maybe it's a conviction. Like I was like, oh, I don't have time to have a Sabbath. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh. Maybe it's your wife's voice. Maybe it's your husband's voice. Maybe it's something. But there will be a response. I'm confident. And the more you practice this, the more you will get to know it. The more you spend time with Jesus, you will get to know his voice. The more time you spend in his word and the more time you spend praying and listening for a response, you will start to hear him and understand how he speaks to you. Your firsts got to be with God, period. Now, one of the most important things in my whole office, John knows, but one of the most important things in my whole office is a little silly bumper sticker that I have above my whiteboard that simply says, have you asked God? I know that sounds really silly to be one of the most important things in my office, but it's a reminder anytime I go to that whiteboard to plan, anytime I go to that whiteboard to sketch out my mind for somebody else that I'm trying to explain myself to. I like to draw pictures to explain myself because, again, I'm all over the place, so stick figures help. But anytime I do that, I have to stop and send that quick prayer up. Be like, God, do you want me to say anything? And it's okay to give an honest answer. It's okay to say, I don't know if I'm supposed to do that. I want to pray about it, but actually pray about it. Now again, please don't hear me saying something I'm not saying. I'm not saying stop volunteering or that you're not needed. You are absolutely needed. You are absolutely needed. In fact, we are constantly in need of more volunteers. So if anything else, be praying about how you can continue to serve. But gang, I care about your hearts. And knowing our church and knowing our family, we are some doers, man. And therefore, some of us in our body, myself included, live at a really high risk of being pulled apart in too many different directions, away from the life-giving relationship with Jesus. And we turn it into this DIY, do-it-yourself version of the torture of death by distraction, where we're willingly and willfully being pulled in multiple different directions. And I know some of you in here are tired. It's that time of year. Christmas just wrapped up. I know how many of y'all in here are actually tired. Not just because it's the 9 o'clock service, but because you have done a lot. 2019's been a busy year, right? I think, excuse me. I think there's some of you out there that are burdened a little bit by life. Tired of doing so stinking much. You're working a lot. I get it. I feel you. But it's in those times that I so often want to scream out like Martha and be like, God, don't you see me? I'm doing so much. I need you. But when I'm most tired is when I have to remember that my order of operations is probably off. If I'm doing it on my own, I need a refreshing rest. But here's good news. You guys ready for some good news? Jesus knows our hearts, and he knows this world. Not only did he make the world, but he helped. He came into it. He lived in it. He's done this life. He knows what's up. He knows how busy things can get. He knows how easy it would be to be pulled in so many different directions. He constantly, when he was looking for time to get away and pray, people would still follow this man to speak to him. He gets what it looks like to be pulled in different directions. But he always took time to go back to the Father. And he has a reminder for us in Matthew 11. He says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Men and women, if that is not exciting to you, you need more breath in your lungs. Because I will say, if you've ever been tired, if you've ever been burdened, if you've ever been exhausted from all of the doings, if you've ever at the end of your day been like, my God, if I do one more thing, I'm going to collapse, then you get this. And there's nothing wrong with a good hard work. There's nothing wrong with working so hard that you're covered in sweat and grime. There's nothing wrong with being tired, having poured it all out for your ministry. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. I just want to make sure that you are not pulled in so many different directions, that your order of operations is off, and that you are in a process of slow death by torture. See, I was in a funk about a month or two ago. I was weary. I was tired. I was needing refreshment. And then God met me with something really simple, but I want to share it with you guys today. I was blessed by the simplicity of God's good news. It was a super basic reminder, but one my soul needed, and I think some of you guys need too. You ready? It's the simplest teaching you'll ever get. God loves you. I know that sounds trite because so many people abuse that phrase. So let me say it again. God loves you. God loves you. And it's out of this truth that I was reminded of something really hard for me to grasp because, again, I'm a doer and I get identity out of doing. But here's what I got. I could quit ministry today and God would still love me and want to spend time with me. I could stop all my doings right now and God would still love me and want to spend time with me. Men and women, you guys can do the same thing. Hear me. You could quit your job. You could quit volunteering. You could quit on Chick-fil-A. You could quit the PTA. You could quit evangelizing. You could quit doing whatever the doing is that is distracting you. And God would still love you. I'm not saying he wants you to do those things. Hear me. I'm saying that he would still love you if you walked away from them. And he would still want to spend time with you, just like he wanted to spend with Mary and Martha, just like he wanted to spend time with Mary and Martha, sitting at his feet. God doesn't love you and me because of all we do. He loves you because you are a son and daughter of the Most High God. He loves you. He came to this place for you. He literally stepped out of heaven into earth. We just celebrated it with Christmas. He did that for you. He died for you. He rose for you. He came back from the grave for you. He conquered sin for you. He loves you, period. Period. Men and women, the coolest thing about the gospel is it's so simple. God loves you. There is no better news. Are we to work hard? Absolutely. Are we to serve? Absolutely. Are we to evangelize? Yes. Are we to continue volunteering? Yes. And you know what? Yeah, I know there's stuff to do. There's texts to respond to and fires to put out. And dang it, the dishes still need to be done and the laundry needs to be put away. But guys, I want to encourage you to remember something that's super important from Luke chapter 10. Jesus is in our house. He's here. He's here. Do you get it? And he's saying, don't get distracted. I'm right here. Don't miss out on what is better. I want you to come and sit at my feet. So with that, I want to bring the band up.